Hi, I'm Kat Kalashian, and welcome to the Live and Invest Overseas podcast. Today, we're going to talk about Asia. It's a giant part of the world, obviously, so there's a lot to talk about. But today, we're just going to scratch the surface of why you might like to live in Asia and some of the top places that you might choose to live in Asia as a foreigner. So this is the world's largest, most populated and diverse continent. As I said, there's a lot to dig into here, but affordability and saving money is one of the number one reasons that people consider this idea of moving overseas or retiring overseas. And Asia is probably the best place in the world to live a very high-end lifestyle for as cheap as it gets. So Asia, I would say, is the cheapest place on earth to live well, but there's a lot more to Asia than just living cheap and enjoying the amenities that the country or the continent has to offer. Aside from the affordability, you'll have white sand beaches, tropical rainforests and mountains, modern and colonial architecture, majestic temples, river cities, and beach towns, cutting-edge technology, some of the world's fastest internet, and very welcoming locals. Nowhere else in the world really can you get so much for so little when it comes to your budget. So living in Asia, here are just a few things to keep in mind if you are thinking about starting a new life in Asia. So first of all, communication, number one thing, it's going to be a challenge for sure. Even just understanding nonverbal communication. Verbally, yes, you'll have an actual language barrier, but nonverbal communication can be just as much of a tripping point in Asia for Westerners. So conveying respect in a culturally appropriate manner is done very differently, and it can be very challenging to navigate these waters. So you'll want to take some kind of a language course, immersion course, something that will help you learn to navigate the social do's and don'ts of Asia. A smile, for example, in Asia can convey many different emotions, from amusement or happiness to embarrassment and even anger. So, you have a smile on your face. It might mean something totally different to the person you're smiling to. There are hand gestures that I know this one means something very naughty in certain countries. I don't actually know if they're in Latin America or in Asia or in Europe. I actually have no idea, but I know what it means. And so this A-OK to an American means something very different to much of the world. A wave can mean something different. Pointing can be incredibly rude. So watch what you do with your hands. Maybe make a habit of putting your hands in your pockets. Direct eye contact is another thing. It's considered very aggressive to make eye contact. People generally look down and slightly away if they want to show us respect, especially when they're speaking to you. Please and thank you are words that are less often said and more often expressed by a smile or a slight bow. So again, these are all things that are going to change even region to region within all of the different countries that you might choose to live in. So wherever it is that you move to, I highly recommend some kind of immersion or adaptation course of some kind. The infrastructure in Asia is some of the best in the world, but it's also a little bit different than everywhere else in the world. People live a lot closer together in Asia. It's not at all unusual to have large multi-generational houses where many different generations are living together. That's quite common. Newer buildings are made from fire and insect repellent building materials, so you don't have to worry about that too much. And most of them have the same amenities. For example, indoor plumbing, electricity, cable TV, etc. But you can't always take that for granted. So these are things that you want to look into, especially if you're looking at living in a place where foreigners are not as common. In places, for example, Bangkok, where foreigners are extremely common, and in other parts of Asia where high-rise condos are being sold to foreigners directly, those are all going to be equipped with amenities that you're used to. A building that was built for locals that isn't intended for foreigners might have very different standards. So look into that and don't take it for granted. Roads can be very good, for example, in Singapore and Malaysia, and most of the roads in Thailand are also very well maintained and of good quality. Elsewhere, though, it's hit and miss. Roads might just just be dirt or gravel. They might be paved, but in poor repair. This is also the case in Mexico and, Panama, Colombia, anywhere in the West that is still developing. I mean, I would say that Mexico is a first world country, but it's still got some areas that seem like a developing country, out in the interior of the country where, again, you're not seeing foreigners, where the income level is much lower and the cost of living is much lower. These things aren't as big of a priority. So roads tend to go unpaved, and you've got to be prepared to walk on a dirt road or go through some potholes in your car, maybe get a flat tire or two when you're driving down them. So even though the cities may offer the best of the amenities, you can't always take that for granted in more rural parts of the country. You'll also notice a ton more motorbikes. So motorcycles, electric scooters, anything on two wheels that's motorized is very popular in Asia. You'll see them everywhere. You'll hear them everywhere. And you will see more things that fit onto a motorbike than you ever thought in your life could possibly fit on a motorbike. You might see a family of 6 and all their groceries and their dog on the motorbike. And I'm not really exaggerating. Trains are used more for public transportation than they are in the West, which is also true in Europe and less so in Latin America, just because there's less of a developed rail network. But in places where there are these well-developed rail networks, people really do use the trains. The United States is a very large country, so is Canada. So trains aren't quite as practical as flying. And that's the case for much of Asia as well. But within our region, certainly trains are a great option for getting around, and they are well used and well maintained. So they do tend to be clean, safe. You would have no concerns getting on a train in Asia. They're efficient as well. Culture shock. I think it goes without saying there will be culture shock moving to Asia. Your life will be exotic, adventurous, unexpected, strange, alien, really fun, a little bit terrifying. The culture shock, though, will not be insignificant. It will hit you in every aspect of your life when it comes to eating, when it comes to sleeping, talking to people, going shopping, all of these are things that you have to get used to in a new place. How they do something in a new place is something you have to get used to in any place you move to. But things are just that little bit more alien in Asia, a little bit more different than we're used to. So for some, this is thrilling, it's invigorating, it's everything you want in life. For others, it's intimidating, even terrifying. I don't know if I would be able to hack it in Asia. I love adventure. I am a seasoned traveler. I've been living overseas practically my entire life. I've read from many of our correspondents about their lives in Asia with great jealousy, and I always think what a grand adventure that would be. But I don't know. I've heard from people that lived in Korea for a few weeks, for example, and all they wanted to do was come home and eat some cereal or order a pizza or something that's a little bit of a creature comfort from home. So it's worth keeping in mind that you have to be honest with yourself and definitely give yourself the benefit of the doubt. Try things out on a trial basis before you take a big leap and a one-way ticket. That's probably a little bit more than you want to bite off at one time. Should you get residency? So this has been a big question in Asia over the past decades for a long time, because for so long it really wasn't even possible to formalize your residency status in Asia. Most countries didn't offer any kind of way for a foreigner to easily live in the country. And that's slowly changing. So for a long time, people did what's called a border run or a visa run, where essentially they would just leave, they would stay in the country until their tourist visa ended. They would leave the country for a weekend. That might just be to a neighboring country. It might have been a trip back home. It could have been another vacation entirely. But they would come back basically just with a renewed tourist stamp and then stay again for the next 3 months. And this can be a very effective way of staying in a place. It can be very cheap. Many of the countries never actually had laws preventing it. So you weren't actually doing anything illegal. You were just in a gray area, let's say. Slowly but surely, those days are dying. Countries are putting restrictions into place. They don't want people doing this anymore. Of course, the cost could also be prohibitive if you're living very far from any border. That's not going to be an affordable way to spend the rest of your life trying to cross a border every 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is that you've got on your tourist visa. So it is now possible to get residency in some of the countries. And of course, that is one of our stipulations for recommending any country. It has to have a good way to let you into the country. So for the following top 10 list, you know that they all offer some way for you to formalize your residency. And then finally, the one thing that I would just beg you to keep in mind is that Asia is far. It's the practical downside of geography. It is a long, long way to Asia. I mean, it is literally on the other side of the world for those of us in North America, which is, I think, most of our listeners. So Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, they are all as far away as they could possibly be. I think possibly Australia would be longer to get to, but otherwise, it is, that is the fact of the logistics that you'll have to deal with. So if you want to look at spending time in Asia, it can often make sense to do so for just a few months of the year. A lot of people, again, coupled with this problem of residency, the fact that so many people couldn't get residency for so long, people would stay for just a few months of the year, pick the best season that they want to stay there. And so Asia can be a great option for that, for a part-time retirement. So let's move on to our top 10 choices. Live and Invest Overseas top picks for where to live in Asia. Number 1, Georgetown, Malaysia. The low costs are a big part of the appeal here. The healthcare is excellent. There are tons and tons of foreigners. This town is practically full of foreigners, and they're all very welcoming, as are the locals. It's a safe and stable part of the country. It is very diverse, but English is the language that holds the ethnic stew together. So English is basically the lingua franca. And it's also, Malaysia is one of the world's most friendly tax jurisdictions. So you would only pay tax on any income that you actually make in Malaysia. Any income that you make in any other country that you bring into Malaysia is not liable for tax there. So very tax-friendly place to live. Number 2, Bali, Indonesia. Lush jungles, volcanoes rising through the clouds, the rice fields cascading down to the valleys. It doesn't get much more picturesque than Bali. Even the smallest towns have these multi-tiered Balinese temples that are just gorgeous and add so much, add that picture postcard look to any little place that you look in Bali. The coastline is just pristine. It is a fantastic place to go diving. In fact, it's world-class diving, surfing, snorkeling, parasailing, and practically anything else you can think of to do on the water you can do here. In the city, you'll find bars, dancing, discos, basically anything you can think of to do on land, you'll also find. So very happening entertainment life, as well as very active outdoor lifestyle that you could have here. The dining options are fantastic, whether it's from the street food that costs a pittance to the white glove 5-star Michelin starred place. They both offer their own wonders, and definitely you should try both of them if you can. Number 3, Da Nang, Vietnam. The roads and architecture here are modern, so that's a good thing. But most of the families are still family run. So what you get basically here is this practicality. All of the practicalities are modern and efficient, but you still have that feeling that this is a small town, that, you do know all of your neighbors, and that things are very close to home here. So there's this wonderful mix that is being played with in Da Nang. There are no international brand name cafes or coffee shops or fast food restaurants. Almost. I mean, there might be one or two, but for the most part, you're not going to find those here, which again, it lends to that feeling of very small town, back in the day feeling. This is also, though, a fast moving city. It's full of skyscrapers. It's, got giant malls and great entrepreneurial spirit, energy, and lots of enthusiasm. So you'll feel all of that here, and it makes for a really interesting vibe. Meantime, it's still a little bit genteel, alongside all of that efficiency in the skyscrapers, you'll see a lady riding side saddle on the back of a motorbike being chauffeured to wherever it is that she's going by, by her spouse or her family member. So again, there's this great balance between the old and the new here. I honestly, I dread to try and pronounce this name of an Indian town. Udagamandalam. It's called Ooty. So I'm going to stick with Ooty, India. Cool weather, wooded hills, and plenty of fresh water prompted the establishment of a little hill fort up on this hill in India that was put there by the British. And during the colonial period, it was the British officers' summer resort. So has a very long history of attracting people for its cool climate and its nice, relaxing retreat feel. There are botanical and rose gardens here, parks, lakes, a golf course, and lots of historical buildings that date to the 1800s. So a great kind of a break from frankly, a break from Asia. It's a little bit cooler up here. It has this kind of British feeling, a very colonial city, so very British architecture, and all of this, lush greenery just makes it really feels like it's a real retreat. But this is obviously India. And you're not going to mistake yourself for being in the West, even though you're in Ooty. Number 5, Chiang Mai, Thailand. The really, really low cost of living is the number one reason that people choose Chiang Mai. And believe me, many people have chosen it. There's also great healthcare that's extremely affordable, great weather, rich history, and a distinct culture. The big downside for Chiang Mai is that air pollution can be very bad for part of the year. Annually, farmers do the slash and burn method to clear their fields. So this runs from about mid-February through mid-April. And a lot of foreigners choose to head out of the country during that time. Number 6, Kota Kinabalu in Malaysian Borneo. So this is one of the world's most livable beach cities. It is safe, clean, peaceful, and very well organized. It has a very low cost of living and a high standard and low cost of healthcare. The snorkeling, diving, boating, and ferry hopping potentials there are second to none. It would be really fun to just make a habit of boating to all of the nearby islands and exploring your new home that way. Number 7 is Dalat, Vietnam. It's actually really popular among Vietnamese tourists, especially newlyweds. In fact, it is the honeymoon capital of Vietnam, so a very romantic place to spend time. It's got this eternal spring-like climate, which is probably why it attracts people, especially for weddings when you don't want to be sweating walking down the aisle. So temperatures generally average about 62 degrees year round. So just very stable climate that's very enjoyable for those who like a temperate climate. Number 8 is Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Foreigners are welcome in this city. Foreigners have always had a big role in this city. English is the language of commerce here. So again, it tends to be a bit of a lingua franca, and you won't have as much of a language barrier trying to make yourself understood here. The healthcare is first rate. Public transportation is state of the art and efficient. The beautiful beaches are just a quick flight or a drive away even. You might be able to drive depending on where you locate yourself. And the cool mountain retreats are also less than an hour away. So great options for enjoying both the heat and the cool here. Number 9, Hua Hin, Thailand. Here you can afford a very high standard of living, regular dinners out at first class restaurants on a retiree budget. The standard of local medical care is very good, but you're also less than 3 hours from Bangkok, which is one of the most medically renowned cities in the entire world. It boasts the region's top hospitals, not just the countries, the entire region, the entire continent's best hospitals. So if healthcare is a concern, this is a great option. Housing options include everything from modern condos to beachfront homes and secure modern gated communities. So there's a wide range of homes that you could choose from here. And number 10, that brings me to Taipei, Taiwan, a clean, safe, well-organized city with all the appeal and infrastructure that you would want living in a big city, amenities and comforts of the region's A-list destinations like Singapore and Hong Kong. So that's the level that we're looking at here in Taipei. If you've seen photos of Singapore or Hong Kong, these are the creme de la creme of infrastructure and organized cities. Taipei ranks right up there alongside them with one massive difference, which is the price. Singapore and Hong Kong are practically beyond the means of the average mortal, but Taipei, Taiwan is still absolutely an affordable location, even if you are a retiree living on a budget. There you have our top 10 Leos recommended destinations for living in Asia. Let me know what you think. Do you have any comments? Have you lived in Asia and have your own insights to share? What are your concerns about a potential new life in Asia? Let me know in the comments and I would love to get back to you, and I will hope to see you again soon. Don't forget to subscribe and like. We post a new video every Saturday, and I will talk to you soon. Happy trails.